Unit 7, Intellectual Disability and Specific Learning Disorder. 7.2 Intellectual Disability. Definition. Jagdish's mother contacted psychologists because he was being disruptive at school. Jagdish was 17 years old with Down syndrome and was described as likable and at times, mischievous. Since childhood, Jagdish had undergone many tests of IQ functioning in the range of 40 to 50, which placed him in moderate intellectual disability. In school, Jagdish attended separate classrooms meant for children with special problems. Jagdish was placed in regular classes but was unable to proceed beyond class 2, after which his teachers placed him in special classes. Jagdish has been cheerful and pleasant for his teachers and has made many friends in his class. He is very social and participates in all school activities that involve music and dance. However, lately his teachers complained to his parents that he was being difficult and oppositional. When Jagdish's mother was interviewed, she expressed frustration at the classes because he was asked to do boring and repetitive tasks like folding paper. Jagdish felt frustrated too, because he was being treated like a baby. Whenever Jagdish thought that he was being given work too easy for him, he would respond by being disruptive and naughty. However, his behavior was interpreted by the teacher as communicating that the work was too hard for him and responded by giving even simpler tasks, after which Jagdish protested and resisted more vigorously. Compared to any other mental disorder, people with intellectual disability have received most of the devaluing, stigma, bullying, and shameful treatment from lay people and medical professions. The medical terms used to classify different levels of intellectual ability were turned into pejoratives over the ages, namely, idiot, moron, and imbecile. Similarly, the term used for intellectual disability used in DSM-4 was mental retardation, retarded, that also turned into an abuse. Intellectual disability, also known as intellectual developmental disorder, is defined as sub-average functioning in general mental abilities such as reasoning, problem-solving, planning, abstract thinking, judgment, academic learning, and learning from experience beginning before the age of 18 years, and who have deficits in adaptive functioning. Thus the definition has three main aspects: sub-average intellectual ability, that is, they score significantly lower than average intelligence. Thus they have an IQ of 70 and below. Deficits in adaptive behavior or daily living skills such as brushing teeth, bathing, combing, etc. They lack in personal and social skills required to function effectively in our daily life activities. Occurs within the developmental period, that is, before 18 years of age. The above definition of intellectual disability covers deficits in intelligence as well as problems with daily performance. The age criterion is important as it distinguishes between individuals who have had intellectual impairments throughout their developmental stage and those who acquired intellectual functioning impairment after maturity. The latter category of individuals is diagnosed with dementia rather than intellectual disability. The causal factors for intellectual disability range from biological, psychosocial, socio-cultural, or a combination of the three. About 1 to 3% of general population falls into the category of intellectual disability, with approximately 90% of these individuals are assessed to be at mild intellectual disability. People with mild intellectual impairments can, with proper preparation, carry out most of the day-to-day activities. Many can learn to use mass transportation, purchase groceries, and hold a variety of jobs. Whereas those with more severe impairments may need help to eat, bathe, and dress themselves, although with proper training and support they can achieve independence. Difficulties for both mild and severe cases affect many areas of functioning. For example, communication in mild cases may lead to difficulties with articulation and expression of thought. By contrast, people with more severe problems may never learn to use speech as a form of communication and may require sign language. Cognitive processes are adversely affected in people with intellectual disability, making learning a challenge. However, the level of challenge depends on how extensive the cognitive disability is. Unlike in DSM-4, the severity levels in DSM-5, mild, moderate, severe, and profound, are determined on the basis of adaptive functioning and not on intelligence quotient, IQ, scores. This is because adaptive functioning and not IQ scores is necessary to determine level of support necessary to maintain an acceptable condition of life. IQ scores are not overemphasized and functioning levels are considered as important. The three domains of adaptive functioning have been identified: conceptual, social and perceptual domain. The assessment of intelligence across three domains, conceptual, social, and practical, ensures that clinicians base their diagnosis on the impact of the deficit in general mental abilities on functioning needed for everyday life. With early diagnosis, parental assistance and special educational programs, people with intellectual disabilities are able to achieve significant degrees of functionality. Box 7.1 DSM-5 Criteria for Intellectual Disability, APA, 2013. A deficit of intellectual functions, such as reasoning, problem-solving, planning, abstract thinking, judgment, academic learning or learning from experience, and confirmed by both individual clinical assessment and standardized intelligence testing. B. Deficits in adaptive functioning, that failure to meet developmental and socio-cultural standards for personal independence and social responsibility. Without ongoing support, the adaptive deficits limit functioning in one or more activities of daily life, such as communication, social participation, and independent living, across multiple environments, such as home, school, work and community. See onset of intellectual and adaptive deficits during the developmental period. 7.2.1 Clinical picture in intellectual disability. The DSM-5 criteria classifies severity of intellectual disability on the basis of daily life skills. The categories or the subtypes of intellectual disability are as follows: 1. Mild intellectual disability. Largest number of people diagnosed with intellectual disability are those with mild intellectual disability. These individuals are considered to be educable, 3rd-6th grade. Their intellectual levels as adults are comparable to average 8-11-year-olds. Socially, they are considered to be that of adolescents, although they lack the imagination, inventiveness, and judgment of a typical teenager. Most cases of individuals with intellectual disability do not show any sign of brain pathology or physical anomalies. These individuals may require some intermittent and limited supervision, because of their limited ability to foresee the consequences of their action. As adults, they can marry, have children, but may need significant help during episodes of distress. Early diagnosis, parental assistance, special educational programs can help these individuals achieve simple academic and occupational skills and become self-supporting citizens. 2. Moderate intellectual disability. Individuals with moderate intellectual ability usually attain intellectual levels of 4-7-year-olds, and fall into educable and trainable category. They may be able to read and write a little and manage to communicate verbally, but their rate of learning and level of conceptualization is very limited, 1st-2nd grade. They are presumed to be able to achieve partial independence in daily self-care, acceptable behavior, hold a job in a sheltered environment. 3. Severe intellectual disability. Sensory defects, motor disability and speech development are severely affected in these individuals. There is limited level of personal hygiene and self-help skills, which somehow lessen their dependency, but they are always dependent on others for care. Some individuals may gain to certain extent from training and can perform simple occupational tasks under supervision. 4. Profound intellectual disability. Such individuals are severely deficient in adaptive behavior and unable to master even simple tasks like buttoning, using spoon to eat, toilet training, bathing, etc. In some individuals, speech may not develop or may be rudimentary. Generally related to organic brain damage resulting from physical abnormalities, central nervous system pathologies, seizures, etc., and can be diagnosed in infancy. The individuals require constant support and custodial care throughout their lives. They usually have poor health and low resistance to diseases, thus having short life expectancy. 7.2.2 Causal factors of intellectual disability. The causes of intellectual disability can be classified into two groups. First, biological basis, i.e., intellectual ability caused by some known brain pathology or organic impairments. In these cases, the level of functioning is almost always at least moderate. Profound intellectual disability, although rarer, is also related to organic pathology. Second, cultural familial basis of intellectual disability. About 75% of cases with intellectual disability, usually with mild intellectual disability, are thought to be a result of social and environmental influences. Environmental factors like child abuse, neglect and socio-emotional deprivation combine with biological influences to cause intellectual disability. Genetic factors. Intellectual disability, especially mild intellectual disability, tends to run in families. About 300 genes have been identified as having the potential to contribute to intellectual disability. However, it is also important to note that poverty and socio-cultural deprivation that may contribute to impaired brain development also tends to run in families. Genetic aberrations may lead to metabolic alterations that negatively affect the brain's development. Mild intellectual disability is usually attributed to multiple genes, whereas severe and profound intellectual disability is likely to be associated with identifiable single gene disorders. Dominant gene disorder, only one gene is needed for its expression, includes conditions such as tuberous sclerosis. About 60% of people in tuberous sclerosis have intellectual disability along with seizures and characteristic bumps on skin. Recessive gene disorder expresses itself only when paired with another copy of itself, such as phenylketonuria, PKU, in which the child has an inability to break down the protein phenylalanine found in food. If detected early, intellectual disability can be prevented through special diet. Finally, X-linked gene, present on X chromosome. Conditions such as Fragile X syndrome primarily affects males and causes moderate severe intellectual disability and autism-like symptoms. Infections, toxic agents and radiation. Intellectual disability is associated with wide range of infections and toxic agents, such as exposure to HIV, German measles, carbon monoxide, and overdose of any toxicity. Excessive alcohol intake during pregnancy leads to a condition like fetal alcohol syndrome. Rh incompatibility between parents has also been associated with intellectual disability in the child. In a medical study, it was found that the deadly gas leaked from a Bhopal pesticide plant, Bhopal gas tragedy, the 3rd of December, 1984, is continuing to affect third generation of victims. About 2,500 children were identified with birth defect and about 164 of them were assessed to have intellectual disability. Additionally, Exposure to radiation may lead to mutations, which is why pregnant women are not allowed in X-ray rooms in hospitals. For example, studies on 1,600 children who were irradiated while they were in their mother's womb during the atomic bomb explosions in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japanese cities that were bombed during World War II, 1945, revealed that 30 of them suffered clinically severe intellectual disability. Trauma/physical injury. Physical injury at birth, for instance, because of forceps delivery, difficulties in labor due to malposition of the fetus, lack of sufficient oxygen during birth from delayed breathing, and bleeding within the brain may be caused due to the physical trauma are associated with intellectual disability. Malnutrition. Unhealthy and unbalanced diet, devoid of protein and other essential nutrients, during early development of fetus does irreversible physical and mental damage. In many villages in India, because of poverty and lack of education, many pregnant women do not get healthy and nutritional diet. Malnutrition continues to plague many children below the age of 5 years in India, often leading to their death or poor physical and mental development. Organic retardation syndromes. Intellectual disability stemming primarily from biological causes can be classified into several recognizable clinical types such as phenylketonuria, PKU, Down syndrome, and conditions involving cranial abnormalities. Down syndrome, trisomy 21, is a condition in which an individual has extra 21st pair of chromosomes. These individuals have recognizable facial features. Nearly all adults with Down syndrome past the age of 40 show signs of dementia of the Alzheimer's type. It is possible to detect Down syndrome in utero and had led to the ethical question of whether it is advisable to abort fetus detected with Down syndrome or not. A mother writes on the matter, "If we deny someone the chance to be born because we've decided they won't meet a predetermined measure of status or achievement, then we fail to grasp what it is to be human." Cranial abnormalities like macrocephaly, large-headedness, microcephaly, small-headedness, and hydrocephaly, accumulation of abnormal amount of cerebrospinal fluid, are conditions associated with intellectual disability amongst other problems. 7.2.3 Management for intellectual disability. A number of special education and rehabilitative programs have been developed to improve the adaptability and functionality of individuals with intellectual disability. Institutionalization of people with intellectual disability depends on the quality of care and services provided by the institution. Education and training facilities for individuals with intellectual disability are extremely inadequate. Educational and training programs can help in improvement of skills such as personal grooming, social behavior, basic academic skills, and simple occupational skills. Behavioral principles such as breaking a complex task into smaller subcomponents can help individuals learn at their pace and experience success. Vocational training for those with mild intellectual disability can help individuals become independent and productive community members. Whereas, special education classes for those with moderate and severe intellectual disability emphasize on the development of self-care and other skills, for example, toilet training. Mainstreaming or inclusion programs. Regular schooling of children with mild intellectual disability requires careful planning, a high level of teacher skill, and facilitative teacher attitudes. In general, institutionalization is sought for two types of people with intellectual disability: those with profound disability, and institutionalization is sought in childhood itself. And second, for those with mild intellectual disability, where institutionalization is sought in adolescence because of delinquency and other problematic behaviors such as aggression. In general, long-term institutionalization is related to behavioral and emotional problems. In many cases in India, institutionalization may be very expensive for many families. It is not uncommon to find children and individuals with intellectual disability to receive almost no care/support by family or society. 7.3 Specific learning disorder. Children first learn oral language and then learn to read and write that language. Written language is a code that stands for oral language, whereas reading is the ability to construct meaning, comprehension, from the printed language. Academic success of a child depends a great deal on reading, writing, spelling and comprehension. While most children are able to recognize or decode in print the language and use printed language for the language they use orally, people with specific learning disability have significant deficits in reading, written expression and / mathematics. Specific learning disorder refers to clear impairment in school performance or, if the person is not a student, in daily living activities, which is not due to intellectual disability or to another developmental disorder such as autism or attention deficit and hyperactivity. Further, DSM-5 distinguishes learning disorder from learning problems that are primarily a result of visual, hearing and motor disabilities, emotional disturbances, environmental, cultural or socio-economic disadvantage. DSM-5 combines the previous DSM-4 diagnoses of poor achievement in reading, dyslexia, writing, dysgraphia, arithmetic, dyscalculia, and learning disorder not otherwise specified into a single diagnosis of specific learning disorder. Learning disorders in reading, writing, and / mathematics are designated as specifiers. Prevalence rate for specific learning disorder varies from one study to another. One study has estimated that about 5 to 10% children may have specific learning disorder. Out of the three, dyslexia is the most common, whereas dyscalculia is the least common. Significantly, there are more boys than girls diagnosed with specific learning disorder, although more recent researches suggest that boys and girls may be equally affected by this condition. 7.3.1 Clinical picture in specific learning disorder. Children with dyslexia have poor phoneme awareness, i.e., they have difficulty in knowing how to sound out alphabets. A child may achieve phoneme awareness but may lack word decoding ability, they may not be able to read words on a page. Child lacks fluency and may get stuck when trying to read, reading speed is slow, may make guesses at words based on the first letter and may find the entire exercise to be extremely exhausting and may begin to avoid reading altogether. In dysgraphia, child may have very poor and almost illegible writing, wrong spellings for even simple words, and lack organization of ideas and thoughts. Dyscalculia can cause difficulties in learning math concepts such as quantity, place value, and time, difficulty memorizing mathematical facts, difficulty in organizing numbers, etc. Despite being recognized as a distinct neurodevelopmental disorder, learning disorders are poorly understood by teachers, parents, and school administration. Blaming of victim and attributing the problems to the child's character, you're lazy, you're useless, you are stupid, and lack of motivation is common. Conventional schooling and parenting can be detrimental for the self-esteem of a child with learning disorders. It is not uncommon for parents to receive a diagnosis late, by the time the child's self-esteem and psychological well-being has already been compromised through internalization of negative comments, brickbats and criticisms received. Many well-known and famous people like Abhishek Bachchan, Winston Churchill, Tom Cruise, Leonardo da Vinci, Walt Disney, and Jim Carrey are said to have dyslexia. Early intervention, high intelligence, talent and motivation can help children overcome their disability through achievements in many fields. Box 7.2. Some common indicators of specific learning disorder. Dyslexia. Poor phonemic awareness, i.e. lack of awareness of sound of alphabets. Poor phoneme-graphem connection, sound symbol correspondence, making of errors while reading omit words, cat for can't, wet for went, signal for sing. Reversals, read 17 for 71, 1 for now, saw for was. Sequencing, reading name as amen, reserve as reverse. Misreads simple words, a for and, from for, then for there. Problems with fluency / slow reading, their reading is painfully slow and halting. Reading lacks fluency. Dysgraphia. Generally illegible writing, writing may resemble scribbles / noodles. Spelling mistakes, poor phoneme-graphem connection, mix of upper / lowercase letters or cursive / print letters. Irregular letter shape and sizes. Dyscalculia. Problems with adding, subtracting, multiplication. Confused by similar-looking arithmetic signs such as and x, and divided by. Understand what adding means yet may become confused when asked to add. Reverse numbers like 18 and 81, or transpose numbers like 752 becomes 572. Problems with telling time. Box 7.3. DSM-5 Diagnostic Criteria for Specific Learning Disorder. A difficulties learning and using academic skills, as indicated by the presence of at least one of the following symptoms that have persisted for at least 6 months. Despite the provision of interventions that target those difficulties. 1. Inaccurate or slow and effortful word reading, for example, reads single words aloud incorrectly or slowly and hesitantly, frequently guesses words, has difficulty sounding out words. 2. Difficulty understanding the meaning of what is read, for example, may read text accurately but not understand the sequence, relationships, inferences, or deeper meanings of what is read. 3. Difficulties with spelling, for example, may add, omit, or substitute vowels or consonants. 4. Difficulties with written expression, for example, makes multiple grammatical or punctuation errors within sentences, employs poor paragraph organization, written expression of ideas lacks clarity. 5. Difficulties mastering number sense, number facts, or calculation, for example, has poor understanding of numbers, their magnitude, and relationships, counts on fingers to add single-digit numbers instead of recalling the math fact as peers do, gets lost in the midst of arithmetic computation and may switch procedures. 6. Difficulties with mathematical reasoning, for example, has severe difficulty applying mathematical concepts, facts, or procedures to solve quantitative problems. The affected academic skills are substantially and quantifiably below those expected for the individual's chronological age, and cause significant interference with academic or occupational performance, or with activities of daily living, as confirmed by individually administered standardized achievement measures and comprehensive clinical assessment. For individuals age 17 years and older, a documented history of impairing learning difficulties may be substituted for the standardized assessment. B. The learning difficulties begin during school-age years but may not become fully manifest until the demands for those affected academic skills exceed the individual's limited capacities, for example, as in timed tests, reading or writing lengthy complex reports for a tight deadline, excessively heavy academic loads. C. The learning difficulties are not better accounted for by intellectual disabilities, uncorrected visual or auditory acuity, other mental or neurological disorders, psychosocial adversity, lack of proficiency in the language of academic instruction, or inadequate educational instruction. 7.3.2 Causal factors and treatment of specific learning disorder. Most commonly held view of the causes of specific learning disorder is that it is caused by subtle central nervous system impairments. Like other neurodevelopmental disorder, learning disorders also have a heritable component. Studies have found that people in dyslexia have reduced activation of left hemisphere. In particular, 3 areas of left hemisphere: Broca's area, word recognition; left parietotemporal area, affects word analysis; and left occipitotemporal area, recognizing word form, have been found to have reduced activation in children with dyslexia when given a phonological awareness task. Further, intervention for reading disability led to greater activation of these areas in children than those who received less intensive treatment. Many treatment programs have been developed for people with learning disorders, including one-on-one tutoring and school group programs. Early intervention programs involve imparting of skills such as reading out loud under close supervision, teaching phonemic awareness through creative methods, readiness skills, such as letter discrimination, phonetic analysis, and learning letter-sound correspondences, have been incorporated. Programs have also been designed to ensure that children experience success that helps boost the self-confidence of children and makes learning interesting. However, while many single-case studies have claimed success in treatment of learning disorders, interventions based on direct instruction strategies for learning have had limited success. Some successful strategies include use of computer-assisted tools like podcast/webcast lectures, tutors, untimed /oral tests, and allowing another individual to write answers that they can dictate out in examinations. Central Board of Senior Secondary Education (CBSE) in India, for instance, mandates schools to give special provisions for children with learning disorders as well as autism. 7.4 Let us sum up. In the present unit, you learned about 2 more developmental disabilities such as intellectual disability and specific learning disorder. In the previous unit, you have already learned about autism spectrum disorder and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Intellectual developmental disorder is defined as sub-average intellectual functioning in general mental abilities such as reasoning, problem-solving, planning, abstract thinking, judgment, academic learning, and learning from experience beginning before the age of 18 years. Special education and rehabilitation programs as well as institutionalization are being used for intellectually disability depending upon the functionality of the individual. While most children are able to recognize or decode in print the language and use printed language for the language they use orally, people with specific learning disability have significant deficits in reading, written expression and / or mathematics. Early intervention programs that includes one-to-one tutoring and school-based programs have been found to be successful for learning disability.